I want you to close your eyes, okay? Or if not close them, I want you to at least imagine in your head a scene. I want you to imagine an idyllic green tropical landscape with lush rolling hills in the distance, a dark blue cloudless midday sky, and I want you to imagine the sensation of damp soil around your feet. Carried through the sticky, humid air is the sweet smell of hibiscus and ripe fruit. Around you are naked women tending to the soil, to their children, reaching the figs that are stemming from the trees nearby, or taking a dip in the surrounding sea. Now I want you to imagine painting that scene that I've just described to you, and that you are the newlywed husband to the Tahitian island girl picking those very figs. Now open your eyes. Here's an extra snippet of art historical information. You are a 50-year-old painter named Paul Gauguin, and your newlywed wife is 13 years old. Now you know how I felt when I found out that my favorite painter was actually a colonialist paedophile. So, the reason I mentioned this painting by Paul Gauguin named Where Do We Come From, What Are We, and Where Are We Going is because when we see an image in a museum or in a gallery, our first impression of it is of how it looks. The art historical information behind it is mostly hidden, and yet it's that information that makes it come alive, which makes you question what you first see and has the ability to completely change the context in which you view it. Whereas before, this was a tropical paradise, now we see it as this troubling, sexualized depiction of indigenous culture. In that instant, our perspectives shift. So why am I talking about art history today? Well, I'm talking about it because on the 13th of October, it was revealed that the art history A-level was being scrapped from the syllabus. And when I heard this information, I took it personally. It felt like an affront, not just on the subject that I love, but also on what I'd been working so hard towards. And why did I feel this way? Well, it's because it turns out that typically I shouldn't be studying art history. There's relatively few circles now in 2016 where I can call myself a minority by being a female state-educated northerner, but then again, you guys have never been in an art history lecture, where it turns out that it's probably more likely for you to be aristocratic than working class. And what does this do? Well, it makes art history a class issue. Art history is a class issue. It's a class issue when you have to pay to go to an exhibit. It's a class issue when my state school didn't offer art history, but the private school down the road did. It's in the unpaid internships, the culture of connections. It's in the stylized snobbery and the security guard who follows you around the room of the art gallery because you don't look like you belong there. All of this reinforces this very toxic, age-old rhetoric that art and the study of art is a realm only for the privileged few. I mean, the fact that in 2015, AQA released figures which showed that of the 98 schools offering art history, only 8 of them were state-educated, is symptomatic of an increasingly problematic cultural divide. It's cultural capital at its cruelest, and its impact will leave behind a generation of young people who otherwise wouldn't be able to study history of art. Which brings me on to another question. Why should you guys care about art history? Why should anyone care about history unless you're middle class or own a significant portion of land in Scotland? Firstly, to that good question, but also, art history is important. Through art, our history is quite literally laid bare. Visually, we see these wounds from the past eternally scarred into the canvas in the form of paint, sculpture, or performance. Before we had the words to properly communicate the horrors of our times, it was through art that it was discussed. I'm talking about racism, colonialism, homophobia, sexism, war, the Holocaust. That is why art history is important, because it demands that we look. It demands that we look at paintings like this, that we stare our uncomfortable, toxic, beautiful history right in the eye, and that we critique it. That is why art history is important. Art history is our history. So let's reclaim it. Thank you.